when he does get on, it would be proper, legal, if y'all made a motion to let him participate.
All right. So,
Can we do that prior, or
We
he
just
has
do
to
it
be
if he
coming
comes on,
on?
he comes on.
If he comes on, I mean.
all right, well, let's go ahead and
Yeah.
get going then. I call the Langston County Board of Supervisors to meet to order. Let us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. So let me know when it's on so we can make that motion. Gentlemen, I'd like to start this meeting off with, as you know, Craig, Mr. Giza and I served as your financial committee, and we met, excuse me, and we met, Don, you remember that?
January 26th.
January 26th, and we met with the superintendent of the schools and the chair and the vice chair of the board, and we discussed their budget. They brought to us 4 proposals, and at that particular time, she went through the superintendent went through the proposals, and we made a request if they could come back with a level budget for this particular school, this coming budget. And the superintendent said she'd go back and see what she could do. She came back to us and she presented a level budget, and but within that level budget, you have a pay increase for the teachers of I believe it's a 3.5% plus the step, which equates to a 5% pay raise, and a 5%, I believe, a pay raise for all others. Mm-hmm. Also, Mr. Giza and I met with them at the school board office and talked with them again, and what we found out from that meeting, when we were talking about the $15 per hour, it was only 3 employees that was only making less than $15 per hour, and there were 3 bus drivers which got started. Okay, he's up there now. Okay, Mr. Lee's on. I'll make a motion that we will allow him to come in through Zoom. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. So, okay, Mr. Lee, welcome to the meeting.
Okay, can you all hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Did you enjoy
Okay, I
it?
hear you too, okay.
Did you enjoy that game?
I really did. It was one of those gradual pull-aways, but they did pull away from them, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to be way more exciting.
Yeah, you know, it was amazing to me how many of the kids that had graduated years ago was at that game today.
All right, good.
And you were one
Go
of them.
back several years. You all probably don't remember, you know, like Kenny Carter and all those boys, Marcus Carter, and it was Chris Carter. It was just a lot of old Lancaster High School ball players that was there supporting the team today.
Yeah, that spoke well of them, yep, and the coach.
Yeah, we'll try to get them to your March 30th meeting for some recognition and a resolution as well.
Yeah.
So.
All right, I'm gonna continue on. I think I stopped where we said that within that level budget includes the teacher's 3.5% plus step, which equates to a 5% raise for the teachers, with a starting salary of $46,575, and others a 5% raise. And as I was saying, in talking with, as Mr. Giza and I was talking with the superintendent and her chair and the board, vice chair, we found out that there was only 3 employees that was making less than $15 per hour. And there were 3 bus drivers who was recently been hired. And the superintendent said at the end of this year, they will be making $15 per hour. So that wasn't really a big issue. And I'm gonna say this too, I should have informed you all of this once we came, it wasn't Mr. Giza's problem.
Well, I was in on it too.
Yeah, but it was my obligation as your chair to do that, and I apologize to you all for not doing that. I just forgot about it. All right, so that won't happen again. So anyway, I would like for us to just to agree on having the board to bring a level funding budget to us this year so that we can all be on the same page with that. I'm not asking for a vote. I just want consensus on it. So and what the superintendent had expressed, that she was gonna be doing, or the public school's gonna be doing a study anyway of teacher salaries and so on, and bringing that back to us next year. So I'm all in favor of that being done as well. All right, so, we'll start, do we have a consensus?
Yeah, I would just reiterate that we just need to make sure that we're staying competitive amongst the region. And Don will, and I would like to piggyback a little bit on that salary study. Don, will you coordinate with the superintendent
Yeah, I think
to
that's a
do that as a county-wide study?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Instead of just doing it for the school? Let's
Yeah.
just go ahead and bite the bullet and make
Yeah.
sure we're competitive across the board.
All right. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, so to make sure I'm clear with the level funding, when the superintendent made a proposal to us, it was level funding taking out that dollar amount with the loan, is that right? So are we looking at that number that was higher than level funding? I don't have those numbers in front
No,
of me.
the overall budget is built on that level funded example that was brought by the school board. And if Kia's math is still correct here, it was as close to level as possible, that they could, make it work.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, good. All right, Mr. Gill?
Yeah, and the issue with the state hole or whatever,
Right.
Yeah.
they filled that gap.
Yeah, you the one that told me about that.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't be a problem, yeah.
No.
The last I saw, if the county received as much in sales tax revenue as what they had originally estimated, they weren't going to make those counties whole.
No, if you got what you were supposed to estimate you got, then you got what you should have gotten.
Right, and they weren't going to go back and give
They
you,
weren't gonna give you more than what they estimated.
Exactly, yeah, that's right.
No one, the only people that got actually money this biennium were ones that were short.
Right.
They weren't getting to what they were supposed to gotten.
right,
We fortunately were not in that boat, but it was only like $40,000 or something, but.
yeah.
It turned out that we had gotten it anyhow.
Yeah, over 2 years, yeah. That's
Mr.
right.
Gill?
Yeah, I just want to back up what Mr. Palin said. We were both concerned after the last meeting that it looked like that the superintendent was only bringing the one funding. She actually presented us with all four, and we at that time, as the finance committee, had talked about trying to keep it at level funding. So she was doing what we asked at that point, and we didn't want it to think she wasn't fighting for her employees and
Right.
doing what she should be doing, fighting for them, and she was, and we just wanted to make sure everybody was clear on that.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Lee? Mr. Lee, you still in tune?
Yeah. As I said before, I'm just concerned about us falling way behind. But this study that we're gonna do, they gonna do, and we'll join in. That should give us a pretty good idea. I think a better idea than we got right now. But that's my concern, is falling behind, and then them having to go out and recruit against these other regions that's so far ahead of us.
Right.
But I until we get that back in, I agree with just go ahead and receive it level funding, stay at level funding for this fiscal year.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. I think we're all together then. Yes, sir.
How long, Don, do you think it'll take to get that study done?
I've seen them take, 8 months to a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
It takes a while.
Yeah.
Northumberland did one, I don't know, 2-3 years ago. Essex did one. Essex did the most recent one, I think, last couple of years. I know the Juvenile Detention Center did one last year. But yeah, they take close to a year.
Do we have job descriptions for each employee within the county?
Every position that has been filled, now the newer positions that I'm going to talk about, 4 of them tonight, job descriptions have not been created yet for those.
And the same to be said for the school division, is that it's going to be hard to justify dollar amounts if we don't have a job description for that employee.
Yeah.
Or that title.
Well, the ones that are the most critical, I think, as far as staying competitive are your EMS folks, your law enforcement, and your teachers. So, they're going to be pretty pretty, the same across the board. As far as county administration employees go, we've got some hybrid positions where people are wearing multiple hats. And, I know the school system does a little bit of that too, but it's going to be more apples to apples when you look at EMS, law enforcement, and teachers, I think.
And then I'm gonna say one last statement, then we can move on. One of the main reasons we were asking for the school divisions is to bring forth a level funded budget, is because we as a county right now are looking at a lot of outgo. And now I'm thinking with the things, what's happening with school building and building of schools and so on, I'm thinking at this particular time, we need to sort of slow down, look at where we are and so on, and then evaluate where we are and what we need to do as far as going forward, and then we can go back and go forward from there. All right. Okay, if nobody else has anything
But
else to say?
as a
Yeah?
board member, I don't want to ever let money be a reason that we don't do something.
Right, but you don't want to get in trouble either.
No, but we have people, I hope they're working behind the scenes to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of this meeting here today.
Hey, Don, who,
Hey, gentlemen, let me say this, don't forget to speak in your mics.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, all
Thank you.
right. Okay, yes, sir.
hey, Don, who does, is there a firm that will do that study, or are there multiple ones that we'll pick from, or?
There
what's the
are,
process?
there are a few, and we'll have to write a quick RFP for that.
Okay,
But yeah, I know there are a few.
The Berkeley Group, I think, is one of the ones that does. I think
Yeah.
That's who did the Berkeley Group, I think, is the one who did the Essex.
Yeah, there was a firm, it was Brown and somebody who did the one for the juvenile detention center recently. So, and I'm not sure who Northumberland got, but I can check with Luttrell and find out.
thank you.
All right, Mr. Gill?
One thing I'll add to follow up to this discussion is, in years past, and I'm not talking about recent past, but several years ago, that meeting of the two finance committees came about because the schools historically had come in with, a large budget, and the finance committee could help, get the pencils sharpened and massage it a little bit before it came to the Board of Supervisors. But in the recent past here, the last 3 or 4 years for sure, I think the school board and the superintendent have already sharpened their pencils and brought in a pretty finely tuned budget to that finance committee meeting. So to that end, I'm not sure that we need to continue with the finance committee meetings, and I would propose that for next year, the finance committees met prior to your regular January meeting. I would propose that we just have another joint session of both boards before that January meeting, so that,
Everyone's on page.
yeah, so that everybody's on the same page, and we don't have to worry about any, mixed messages being sent.
I would agree, because I thought we'd kind of dissolved the finance committee. I know we had it on paper, but I didn't think we
Yeah.
actually had used it. And-
Well, and like I said, that was the purpose of it, but that was, many years ago purpose. So I think next year we'll just have a joint meeting before your January meeting for the initial budget presentation, and another joint meeting before your February regular meeting to kind of finalize the school budget.
Definitely led to a little bit of, I don't want to say it, misunderstanding as to who was asking what there. And I think meeting as a group makes all the sense in the world to
Yeah.
me.
I'm in for it, but I'm in favor of that as well. But I'll take the blame for that misunderstanding, because I should have gotten in touch with everybody and let you
We're
know
not
where we
blaming
were.
you.
But it was my fault.
There were two on that committee,
And I was there too, so I could have, communicated better as well, so,
I'm in agreement with the, changing it to just having that work session.
And my wife says I know everything, so I should have known. what you
Is,
were thinking.
is the finance committee written into our bylaws or written into anything, or is it just something we just?
it's just been a standing committee over the years.
Yeah.
And, if, when you'll see the debt service schedule later in this presentation, maybe that's more of the place for the finance committee to meet with, if we find the need to borrow any more money, to meet with Davenport in addition with me to hash things out. So maybe that's the role for the finance committee moving forward, if we keep it.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with that. because the way the two boards have been working together now has been fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, more discussion and more meetings together with boards is better than
Yeah.
lack of communication.
Yes.
Yeah. All
Okay.
right. Well, Mr. Lee, I sent you just the synopsis page by email. I thought maybe that might help you follow along today. Glenn, can you give me PC2, put it up on the screen?
Yeah, I got it, Don.
Okay. The synopsis page is, the very first draft of the budget, FY '24. From the audit presentation we had in January that our fund balance has grown to 8.4 million at the beginning of FY '23. If you go down that front page, you'll see at the end of FY '23, we're projecting a fund balance of about 7.3. I'm going to show you when we get into the revenues that number is probably going to be a little bit higher. So where we start FY '24, this is based off of the audited number at the end of FY '22, but I really believe this number is going to be a little bit higher as well. You can see the increases there over the 2 years. We'll get into depth with those.
Can you go back a minute? And right here at the bottom, total revenue, I just wanted to, I'm trying to follow all these numbers here. Why did the 40 go down to 44 million, and when the numbers here, what's making that major difference there?
The decrease, that 1.1 million under school operating revenues is the main factor in that. That's that school construction money, that was a one-time thing. That's no longer there.
That was
And-
something we don't control, right?
We don't control that, no. No. So you're looking at revenues of just under 45 million, including the fund balance. Total expenditures just over 39 million. If all of this plays out, if you all make no adjustments, then the ending fund balance at the end of the year would be 5,808,277. But as I said, I believe that number's going to be higher, and we can go into that right now. The bottom part of that synopsis page just has the capital improvement items, and you'll see that in FY '23, the main part of that 13 million was the 8 million for the new middle school, high school. In this 30 million figure for FY '24, you've got 24 million for the new middle school, high school, in addition to 5 million for non-school related capital improvement items. Now, out of that 30,704,000, 29 million has already been financed. The financing has been secured for that. So you're only looking at 1.7 million in unfinanced capital improvement items. Planning Commission will hold their public hearing on the capital improvement budget this coming Thursday. You go to the revenue sheets, property taxes. This right here is based on a total value of property, taxable property in the county of $2,687,784,400. You divide that by 100, and then another 100 for pennies, and 1 penny comes out to $268,778.
Say that again.
$268,778 on the tax rate.
Don, you have an extra pen down there?
I do, if, I got one.
Thank you. Thought I had one in my jacket, but I don't.
And this budget is built on existing tax rates, 63-cent tax real estate, $2.04 personal property. So using those numbers, we estimate $933,042 from real estate taxes. Public Service Corporation taxes, a little bit of increase from actual FY '22. You'll notice as we go through these, my estimates for FY '24 are based a lot on actual FY '22, unless I've got evidence from FY '23 to date that tells me to do something different. And the first evidence of that is right here on the personal property taxes. When you all approved the FY '23 budget last year, we didn't know at that time exactly how much the values of used vehicles, or vehicles in general, had gone up. And we only budgeted 1.6 million in personal property taxes. The actual bill was closer to 3.2 tax bills. So this is why I'm saying that the FY '23 fund balance at the end of the year will be more than what's reflected on the synopsis page, because the personal property tax is going to be a lot more than that. Currently, as of February 28th, we've collected almost 2.6 million there. So based on that fact, I took what we have collected to date and subtracted 10% for FY '24 and came up with this 2.3 million as an estimate.
What was the justification for the 10% reduction?
In talking with the Commissioner of Revenues, and Marlon has told me that what she has seen is that the values are going to be dropping some. We don't know an exact percentage yet. I just picked 10%, I mean, as a ballpark estimate.
So what you're saying is that the tax rate increased 50% on people this year?
The value did. Tax rate stayed the same at
The rate,
204.
But they paid 50% more.
They
in
paid
taxes.
50% more in
That's a
tax.
pretty steep tax
It is a
increase.
pretty, yeah. But our rate was one of the lowest, and that's why other counties, you saw other counties doing some different things with their personal property tax rates. You all chose not to, because we have one of the, if not the lowest, one of the lowest tax rates around on personal property at 204. For instance, Northumberland and Richmond County, they're all at 375.
I heard a few complaints, but not.
Yeah, I didn't, I mean, we had a few complaints, but not terrible. And that rate, that 204 rate, has been in existence since 2007. So it has not been raised in 16 years. So, and I'm basing this,
In that
but,
regard, it seems pretty fair. It is just, when you think about the 50% increase
Yeah.
on your bill, that's a pretty sticker shock
yeah.
increase.
But over the prior years, they've been getting a break, really, compared to other localities. So,
So Don, when the reassessment gets done, that wouldn't hit till the following year.
the reassessment on the real estate won't take effect until January 1 of '24.
Yep.
So that won't be collected until the fall of calendar year '24, which will be FY '25.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah. So that, this time next year, we'll be talking
Looking
about
at
that. An increase in values, which, that's sure to go up.
When is that, have they started that work already?
Oh, yeah, they've started the third week of January. If they have questions, they'll leave a little sticker at your house and ask you to call them. And they're supposed to have all the values done by the end of October. The new values will be mailed out the first part of November. Then they will conduct, the reassessment firm will conduct some hearings, in early December to try to resolve some issues. Then you all will have to seat a Board of Equalization in the spring of 2024, which you'll see in the budget moving forward. I've budgeted for 10 meetings. I think in the past, we had maybe 7 or 8. Crystal, is that right? Yeah.
There was a lot last time.
Yeah. Yeah, so you all will have to seat a Board of Equalization. They will hear further, hearings from property owners who may not agree with the reassessments, and resolution will try to be reached before the tax bills go out in October of '24. So, I'm not going to go through every single line in here, or we'd be here till 11 o'clock, but you can see that my estimates are based a lot off of actual '22 moving forward. And sales and use tax right here, we usually get estimates from the state on this, but because the budget has not been formally adopted, I don't have the estimate from the state. Usually the estimate from the state is a whole lot higher than the estimate that I put in here, but I based it heavily off of FY '22. You'll see down here the cigarette tax. We had a Chesapeake Bay Region Cigarette Tax Board meeting this morning, quarterly meeting. Initial estimates based on the first few months, I had initially estimated at 65, but based on actual revenues is closer to 50, so I adjusted that down. Conversely, our lodging tax, the short-term rental tax, has gone up some, so I used 20,000 instead of 14. Building land use and permits, we're on pace right now for 210,000 in FY '23, so I used that there
That's
instead.
just the fees paid.
That's just building permit fees. Yep. And again, as you go through these are based a lot off of FY '22. Now, right here, revenue use of money, from use of money, I kept with the 180, and the reason is with the new school loan that we have, that money is in, it's called the State Non-Arbitrage Program, the SNAP program. We earn interest on that money until it is drawn out and spent. So we're going to be earning, additional interest this year that we didn't in '22 because of that large loan in place.
Don, have you reached out or been reached out to the cash invest people that are partners with VACO about cash investments and cash that we have? And they will do an analysis for free and only collect a fee if they can generate revenue for more additional revenue for the county.
We can do that. I haven't done that. That's more of a Bonnie thing. She invests heavily in the Virginia investment pool, but I can relay that to her and
I mean, it would seem to me it's a no-cost thing to do the evaluation, and they don't collect any money unless the county nets additional money on their cash investment.
I'll talk to her about that. Now, the money that's in the SNAP program, the loan proceeds, that has to stay there.
Yeah.
But any additional cash outside of that we have could be, invested elsewhere. And I know Bonnie, she utilizes all the local banks for different accounts, and then, but she also utilizes the Virginia investment pool for a lot of it. But that's her job.
Yeah.
So. Going down charges for services, the biggest one here, the ambulance and rescue fees. We pay the Northern Neck PDC to collect the billing for us. This has really gone up in the past few years. Back when I first became county administrator, this was down less than 300,000, more like 230, 250. So this has really increased, and I'm just basing that off of FY '22. Right here, sanitation and waste removal, I'm using actual numbers here. We're actually, in the past, we haven't been getting revenue for our aluminum. In the past, we had been taking it to Right Way Recycling in Northumberland County. Right Way Recycling is basically, the guy's trying to retire, so he's telling people to find other outlets for their recyclables. So Donald has, he's been working on baling the aluminum and taking it to, someplace like Middlesex Metals. So we're going to actually realize some additional revenue from some of our recyclables moving forward.
So we're managing that in-house instead of having waste management do it now?
Yeah. Well, waste management just handles the waste.
Okay.
The recyclables, we have always taken them to Right Way Recycling
Okay, so we
in Northumberland.
did that sort of in-house regardless.
Yeah. So, and when the new construction commences and gets complete, expanding the Kilmarnock Convenience Center, part of that is a nice metal building with all of the recyclables inside. So we'll be baling the cardboard, the aluminum, the newspaper, all inside of that building, and it'll stay there and stay dry, for the I think it's the Eastern Recyclers that comes and picks a tractor and trailer load up, so.
Hey, Don, what's in the courthouse security fee there? I see that jumped up this year. What is in that expense line?
That is a percentage of court fees that go toward that, and the board approved, and I can't remember exactly when it was, a year or so ago, increasing that fee.
Okay.
Judge Martin sent me an email and said that, you know, state code had changed and we could charge more, so we followed through with that, and the board changed the ordinance to accept that higher percentage.
Thank you.
Under miscellaneous revenue, you know, every year we get a lot of grants and things, and I don't put those in the budget unless I'm positive we're going to get them, so that's why you don't see anything over here to the right under FY '24 for those. I'm sticking with, you know, conservative numbers there.
If you had a number in there, what would that number look like?
Well, you know,
If you're very optimistic.
that number could be 200,000.
Okay.
So total other local revenue, that transfers over to your synopsis page, that money there. The local part of the social services bill this year is $857,622. That's a little bit of an increase over the prior year, but the bulk of their revenue comes from state and federal monies.
What is that increase, our local, what is that from? I should know.
You know, I can't answer that right off. Edna's going to be here either on the 28th or the 30th, and that would be a good question for her at that time. She'll be here on the 30th. So, you know, inflation comes to mind. I don't know if it's any new positions or maybe some increased salaries.
I'm thinking salaries. I'm thinking increase in salary.
Yeah, well, they that could certainly be part of it because they've struggled filling positions down there, and that could be part of it. You'll see, it went online today. It went online today, this afternoon. I put the budget package just like I did in the past, and this is all the supporting documentation, but that's online, so you all can look at that at your leisure. Of course, we can create a budget book for you if you like. I know Mr. Palin always likes one. I've got yours in my office, so if you'd rather have a hard copy, we can do that.
I don't think so.
Let's see. These are non-categorical, you know, right here, the PPTR, the personal property tax relief, that stays the same, 871,000. I don't think games of skill are going to net us anything in '24, so that's why I didn't include it. And again, estimates are based off of FY '22. The comp board categorical aid shared expenses, what I did here was I took the actual FY '22 numbers and I added 5% to that because in the biennium budget that was passed last year, it included a 5% raise.
The fee that Northam instituted on Game of Skills for that one basically period of time only netted us $2,800.
That's what you see.
That's crazy. Those people are taking the state for a ride.
I think we may have gotten some in FY '21 as well, but you know, the sheet doesn't have that on there. So, but what I did was I took the FY '22 numbers and added 5% to them to get these FY '24 numbers. Again, I usually get estimates from the state on this, but because the budget has not been passed, I haven't gotten those yet. So, this is the best estimate that I can use. Other categorical aid here, the victim witness grant, that's state and federal money that basically pays for that position. Our local jail per diem has gone up due to the fact that we have a higher population in the jail now than we have had in the past. So that's gone up. A mild increase in the fire programs fund. Comprehensive Services Act, that's actually been pretty good over the past couple of years. I have seen that skyrocket close to $1 million. Based on the number of kids you have in that you have to pay for.
They've been home for the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, knock on wood.
Yeah.
So you can see there, and again, you'll see these grants here that I have not budgeted for in FY '24 because at this stage of the game, I don't know that we're going to get them. We'll apply for them, but I don't know that we're going to get them. Here you'll see the state share of the social services, a little over $1 million. And total revenue from the Commonwealth is here. That transfers over to the synopsis page. And here is the social services federal government contribution, which also transfers over to the synopsis page. Capital Projects Fund, this is different, a different fund than the loans for the school items. This is a fund that Bonnie manages internally. For instance, the lease revenue bond that you all approved through Truist Bank for $5 million for non-school related capital improvement items. She has that in an account earning interest, and we'll transfer money from that account to the general fund to pay for non-school related capital improvement budget items as they are expensed. So that's why this number has gone up some. This is the school part of this. Now, all of these estimates for FY24 come directly from the school's budget. These are not my estimates. They are their budgets. So when I talked earlier about level funded, this is actually $9,776 less than last year. That was the way the numbers worked. That's as close as level funded could get. And again, these are estimates from the school system. These are not my estimates. These are straight from their budget for FY22. The cafeteria fund here, again, from their budgets, winds up $518,893, and then the textbook fund, $124,435. So this page takes you back. This was at the beginning of FY22. This was the budgeted amount that we had in the budget. This was the audited amount, which is in the actual column. This is FY22 approved, FY22 actual.
And the main difference there is COVID money, right?
No, the main difference there is our historical pattern of underestimating our revenues and overestimating our expenditures to the tune of roughly $1 million a year. That's what that's from. The CARES and ARPA money is not reflected in the general fund.
Okay.
All right, so that's the revenue side. And again, as y'all take time to go through that, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them at that time. Getting into the expense side, the first department is the Board of Supervisors, and I just kept everything the same for FY24, but I will tell you that you all have not considered increasing anything for you all for a very long time. Just to give you an idea of what our neighboring counties are at, right now you all are at $6,000 a year. Middlesex is at $8,000 a year. Northumberland is at $6,000. Essex is at $6,000.
This would be the year we'd have to consider it, right? Because you have to consider it when 2/3 of the board is up for a vote, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know that. I mean, that's a good question. But
I believe that's the way it has to happen, that the board can consider a pay raise for itself only in the years when 2/3 of the board is up for reelection.
Well,
I think, check into that, but
Yeah.
I think that was the case, and
okay.
if we're going to consider it, this would be the year I think we should have to do it.
Well, and like, I'm just throwing this out there. Matthews is at 7,200. Richmond County is at 6,000. And Westmoreland, which I don't really consider apples to apples anymore, they're at 12,000. So just a FYI,
Will you check into that?
I will.
I think we can just push this off until we get that bit
Yeah,
of information.
okay.
And guys, I'll tell you, I'm not cheap.
What do you think? You got
I'm
cheap?
not cheap.
Whatever it is,
I bring a lot to this board, and
whatever it is, we earn
I don't
it.
have any out there.
County administration, okay, this is my department here. I've highlighted that number, that's under the salary line item. That includes a revised salary for the assistant county administrator position. Previously, we had $75,000 budgeted for that. We've gone through the interview process, and I think we all came to realize that that $75,000 was not high enough. And the number that I'm using now is $100,000 for that. This also includes a brand-new position, a recreation coordinator. Now, Mr. Bellows and Mr. Lee know all about this because that is one of the things that the Lancaster 2035 Committee has been working on. And we were trying to hash out whether that position should be a county position or whether it should be maybe a Y position or something like that. Westmoreland has something similar, but in studying this further, I think for accountability's sake, I think this position needs to be a county position. What this person would be responsible for would be coordinating efforts between facilities that the school has, the Y has, the Boys and Girls Club has, Dreamfields has, to allow for adult activities, adult softball, adult volleyball, adult basketball, as well as kids programs that are not being done by the Y, the Boys and Girls Club, or Dreamfields. In addition, it would be, like a Little League football program as well, to help feed our high school football team in the future. So that position is included under this. I've capped it at 60,000. That would be a max, but I'm asking the board to consider including that this year. All of the other numbers, it's the 5% raise and fringes, and then the different line items are based heavily off of actual FY22. County attorney, you'll see here, it was a little bit more than 25 last year. That's not Jim's fault. If you'll remember, last spring, Jim was out for a while on medical issues, and we had to have an interim county attorney, and so we had to, had some extra expense with that. So that's where that is. Now, for this year, I have budgeted 45, and that's $20,000 more, and the reason that is because we've got those two cases out there, the solar lawsuits, and our insurance company, Vaycorp, is handling the representation for those, but there's a $10,000 deductible per case. So that would be the $20,000 that's making up that.
Have those cases been heard in trial yet, and the judge is just sitting on them? Or?
Judge is sitting on them. We're waiting on a ruling or an opinion, I guess a legal opinion from the
That
judge.
could come down tomorrow, it could come down never, basically.
Both cases have been heard now?
No, this most recent case is in the discovery stage
Gotcha.
right now.
Back to the salaries. So we talked about possibly implementing a step for all employees. You don't have that in here.
I don't have a step in here.
But you have a 5% pay increase, which mirrors the school.
The school
district. Is that
system.
why it was done that way?
Well, it was done that way because the state budget includes 5% for constitutional officers and their staffs.
Okay.
That's 44% of our employees here in this complex. So in years past, you could have a comp board funded employee sitting in the same office doing the same job with a non-comp board funded employee. And if the comp board funded employee got a raise and the locally funded employee did not, they're doing the same job. I can't explain that to them. And so that has been the rationale for equalizing the raises given by the state across the board. So that budget contained a 5% pay raise, and so that's what, Jessica and I talked earlier, and, we decided on matching that across the board. I will tell you that in budget versions approved by each house, they've looked at a 7% raise. So if that gets approved by the governor, when they come, if that gets approved by the General Assembly and signed by the governor, ultimately, they're going to have to come back for a special session. Probably going to have to come back and ask for a supplemental appropriation to match that.
Match what?
If they approve a 7%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did our employees get any COVID bonuses like the school employees did?
Yes, yeah, they did. They got, if I remember right, I want to say 2,500 the first year and 3,500 the second year. Don't quote me on that, but it was substantial.
Okay.
The reason I brought up the steps for the county, I guess I was thinking more about our law enforcement and EMT staff.
Yeah.
That I see paralleling our teachers. Just because it's a way to keep them,
Yeah.
and they know what their salaries are going to be in the future.
We'll talk about that when we get to the sheriff and the EMS part. But a salary study, can help with that.
Right.
With all of that. So,
I don't know, I consider a school salary scale half the time a false promise, because it's there, but they don't have to give it every year if they can't afford it. And many years in Lancaster, that's what.
And and I was on the board
scale was
for-
frozen
when
for
that happened, and
decades,
it
and
was,
Yeah.
it was terrible.
it created chaos later down the road when you had to figure out to fix it.
yeah.
Right.
I mean, we've been fortunate, you all granted 6.57% last year. So, and we adjusted the health insurance, the employer contribution to where we're paying more, relieving some of that burden from our employees. And, I mean, we're very competitive.
Where are we on that this year? Are you gonna talk to that at some point?
We're following the same percentage. Oh, it was a 2.2% increase, which is a lot less than.
Are we gonna cover that as a county? We're not gonna increase that on the staff?
We're going to do the same percentages that we did last year, which are, we offer two plans. One is the high deductible plan, one is the Key Advantage 500. For that Key Advantage 500 plan, the county pays 90% of the employee only. And that number sets the amount that is applied to the employee who has the high deductible plan, which that employee who has the high deductible plan will end up getting money put into a HSA, a health savings account, because it exceeds the amount of that insurance premium. But most of our employees are on that Key Advantage 500 plan. So employee only, it's 90% of that plan, county covers. Employee plus one, the county covers 70%. Employee plus family, county covers 50%. And that is, unless Westmoreland has changed, that's the best in the area.
And you said it's going up 2.5%.
2.2% increase this year. Initial estimates that we got back in January were 7% increase. I've got a meeting tomorrow for the actual spreadsheets, and we're meeting for lunch at Lee's, but it's a 2.2% increase.
Well, I'd like to see us hold the employee harmless across the board. I don't think we should increase their
Well, we
percentage
can
at all.
look at that. It was just, that 90-70-50 was very good, and so that's what I was going to hold. But we can go back and look.
It doesn't do much good, in my opinion, to give somebody a 5% raise and then take 2.5% away with insurance costs. I mean,
Well, it won't be 2.5% to them. It would be a whole lot less. But what that is exactly, I don't know. But I can look at if the county picks up the entire increase and see how that affects us. But, I mean, our employees, since we went to that 90-70-50, have been very satisfied. And as I said, that's very competitive in the area.
and it's also cheaper to pick up the extra 5% on that versus continue giving raises too. Like, when you give a raise, you have to pay all these extra fees.
The
You just pay the
fringes.
insurance fees, that's just
Yeah.
straight money to them.
Yeah. Making some notes as I go along. All right, so that's one of the new positions. There's 4 new positions in this budget, and that's one of them. Talked about the county attorney. The auditor, they've got an $800 increase in their fee each year. Real estate assessor, I had originally budgeted $235,000 in FY '23. I thought that would take care of the whole amount because the previous reassessment was $212,000. But as you may recall from your December meeting, I believe, the total bill was $407,000. So I added the difference to FY '24. Commissioner Revenue, most of her increases are salary related. She does increase part-time salaries a little bit. And that is basically to pick up the increased values of improvements between reassessment cycles. Because building is booming right now, it's hard on her current staff to do that. So she has to outsource that a little bit. And she'll be here next week, not next week, the end of the month, to talk about that. Board of Equalization, I alluded to this earlier. They'll get $100 a meeting, a 5-member board. I've budgeted that. Also includes money for a secretary. The secretary of the Board of Equalization has a lot to do, not only putting together the packets for the Board of Equalization meetings, but they have to correspond with the state Department of Taxation, and it's a headache. And Crystal knows better than anybody because she's done it for the last 2 times that the Board of Equalization has met. And they'll have to advertise some meetings as well. The Treasurer's Department, again, most of that increase is salaries and fringes. She did increase part-time as well, a little bit, not because she's adding people. She's increasing the pay to match the required minimum wage law.
On those board meeting pays, do you know if that's fairly consistent with what other counties do?
I don't know, Jason. I'm just going off of what we've done in the past.
Could you do a spot check with maybe Luttrell and Middlesex and see what their fees are for those boards? See if it's comparable?
Okay.
Because we have a hard time getting people for those boards.
Yeah, well, the chairman last time told me that he was not going to do it again, but I've talked to him since, and he said he would. So, which is good, because he does a good job. IT, this is Glenn's department. You'll see here the salary line item is highlighted. This is also a second new position. This is an assistant IT person. Glenn's a one-horse show, and he needs some help. And so I've got a second position there created for him. He would be the one who comes up with the job description. A big part of this position, the new position, would be eventually handling the IT for the sheriff's office. Right now, the IT that the sheriff's office has is being outsourced to Advanced Networks out of Charlottesville. And they do a good job, but they're out of Charlottesville. And so, if we can get that closer home, it would help them tremendously. So I've got that position. That's the second new position. Otherwise, just
Do you know how much the sheriff pays for that current contract?
what's that?
Do you know how much the sheriff pays for that current contract?
It's I don't know an exact number, but it's probably 75,000.
So, it would basically be a wash.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yep. Yeah. And not only that, but
Well, so it would actually be beneficial because we'd have the employee here and they'd be spending the money here instead of sending it to Charlottesville.
exactly. And Glenn may be able to take some time off if he had somebody who who could fill in for him every now and then.
Sure, even when you're off on that job, you're not really off, right? It's like a 24-hour call job.
Is that a yearly contract that we have with the Charlottesville?
Yes.
What are you planning on starting that assistant position at?
Well, all of these are for FY '24, so the earliest would be July 1.
But I mean, amount, I'm sorry,
Oh, I had a max in there at 60.
60,
Yeah.
I thought. All right.
Electoral Board, this is based off of FY '22 a lot. They've gone up some in their election expense, and that's related to how many elections they have and how many election workers they have to have. They've got a new item here in IT support, cybersecurity, which is a big deal now. I didn't allude to it in the county administrator budget, but that line item went up about $10,000 in, the cybersecurity. It's a big deal. Susan will be here next week, not next week, I keep saying next week, the end of the month, if you have any specific questions for her.
Let me ask that for Susan. Did she ever get the pay raise that she was requesting?
Well, let me get to
Okay.
the, she did get a pay raise previously. Right now, I want to say, what is it? Well, I don't want to talk about personnel.
Okay.
Personnel, individual personnel during an open meeting like this. But
that's true, yeah.
what you'll see here is under the registrar's budget, this number is highlighted, the first line item salary. She would like to have basically a $10,000 increase for her salary, plus about a $13,000 increase for the deputy registrar position. That deputy registrar position is terribly underpaid, and so that needs to be increased. And you'll see in your packages, at the very back is the personnel section. So you can go through there and you'll see where they are and where they fall in the FY '24.
Wasn't the state com board doing something with registrars or looking at something?
There was a study to basically put the registrar at the same level as the treasurer position. It's not quite there yet. We do get, back from the revenue page, what was it, 64,000, I think, from $67,713 coming back to us from the comp board for the registrar position. Now, that doesn't quite, there's still a local component to her salary now, but you all will see that as you go through. The $33,000 is she's increasing her part-time salaries as well, so.
Well, these jobs are getting to be tough.
Well, there were, a couple years ago when the early voting started, that was a big deal. There were so many new election laws at that time that came down, and Susan and her team did a great job, adhering to all of those. And Glenn can attest to that as well. So and the reason I talk about the deputy registrar position, we lost our deputy registrar back, what was it, end of February? No, end of January. She actually got offered a very nice job in Chesterfield County, and so can't blame her. So she, we couldn't touch that, what she was offered there, but we could certainly sweeten the pot here some. So that's general government. You can see overall it's an increase of, 327,000.
So there's no
804.
deputy working right now, no deputy registrar at this point?
She has one that's supposed to start Monday.
Monday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And I found my
Out of
first,
curiosity, did our former assistant take the same position in Chesterfield?
it's a similar position, but it has more responsibilities, and it's also closer to her children.
Okay.
So she had some outlying reasons, but the pay was vastly different.
But more responsibility.
Yeah, more responsibility, but, the pay was not the only reason, but it was a big part of it, I think.
But massively is a big word.
Yeah,
You used that twice.
I did. There's a reason for that.
He was stressing that.
Yes.
Go to the courts. This top line is circuit court. This is not our circuit court's office over here. This is the office that the circuit court judge maintains in Northumberland, and the 5 counties that he serves are charged with funding his office. So this is our 1/5 share. of funding that office. And I get billed for this in August. I get no input as far as budgeting number. So what I've done is,
Put in money for his draperies.
so that I've used the best guesstimate that I can here for that. General District Court, got a new General District Court clerk as of a few months ago, and I need to go back and find out what this 2801 is. I don't know what that is, but I need to find out what that is. But, you know, she's asking for $5,400 here. Adult Drug Court, that's something the Board of Supervisors did several years ago to help people who were convicted of crimes, lesser crimes, you know, not having to maybe spend so much time in jail, just a rehabilitation thing. And this is our share of a regional effort. And I think,
Do we have any data on what's going on in that program?
what's that?
Do we have any data on what's going on in that program?
That would be a good question.
What are we getting for our $6,000?
I think it's, you know, I think it works very well. And Tony Spencer would be the one to ask that. And he'll be here again, end of the month. Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court, again, I don't believe she submitted a budget request, so we just used the same thing from FY23. Clerk of the Circuit Court, again, the main difference is just the increase in salaries and fringes. Library, here's another grant that, you know, actually we got it in FY22, but I don't know right at this stage if we will, so I'm not budgeting anything for it. CASA, you know, they do a good job as well, level funded, 5,000. Victim Witness Assistance, we had a turnover here. Dave Farley retired, and the Commonwealth's Attorney has hired a new victim witness person, and he hired her, you know, much younger and less experienced at a lower rate than what we were currently paying. But again, this whole department is basically funded by state and federal money. I would ask you to take notice of this $15,000 decrease right here from FY23 to FY24, and I'll talk about that when I get to the Tony Spencer's budget right here. The Commonwealth Attorney salary line item is highlighted as well. Here's another new position. This is new position number 3. He needs another prosecutor in his office. In the past few years, with all of the body cam footage, he has been using part-time to review a lot of that before they go to trial. The part-time thing, he told me, was not quite working out. So what he's done is he's eliminated the part-time, the $47,972. If you add that 15 from the victim witness to that, it's you know, you're close to 63,000, and he wants to use that for the new prosecutor position. So he's basically tried to fund it from, you know, manipulating, massaging his current budget. So you know, I got to give him credit for doing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Total courts increase of over 69,188. Public safety, here's a big one. Law enforcement. Now, the salary line item right here, Mr. Smith, this only includes the 5% across the board. In the supporting documentation, you'll see a narrative from Sheriff McCraney where he takes a stab at a step scale. It's basically, in my opinion, just a bonus based on years of service. But he needs to do a little more work on that, give me a little more information, because I don't know if it's based on years of service with Lancaster County, if it's based on years of service as a sworn law enforcement officer, or what. So he gives references to Northumberland and Richmond County who have similar scales. But before he comes here on the 30th, I'll ask him to, you know, try to find out more about that. So, but right
I didn't
now,
want it to be complicated. I was
Yeah.
hoping that it'd just kind of be similar to our school system.
yeah.
And I know that they base that on education as well, how you come in, what step you come in on.
Yeah. Well, and our EMS chief, Matt Smith, several years ago, came up with a different pay scale for his folks, because that pool of providers, every county's pulling from the same base, and there's a limited number of paramedics and advanced life support and basic life support, and EMTs. It's, we need a lot more of those. And so he came up with a pay scale a few years ago based on, how much experience you had coming here. You got a bump for years of loyalty to Lancaster. And he did a good job with that, because we haven't had a whole lot of turnover.
So
There.
maybe Patrick doesn't need to reinvent it. Maybe just use what he has.
Well, I've passed all that information along,
The
and
one thing I don't want, though, is I don't want inconsistency. I want everyone to be consistent.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about, equality.
yeah,
So I don't want two different pay scales.
right. No, and
I don't want three different pay scales.
no, and I'm thinking if we're going to go down this road of this salary study, maybe we push all this off until that's done.
Maybe. Well,
You know.
well, with the 5%, that kind of fixes it this year.
Yeah. So, so you can see FY '24 to FY '23. Most of his increase is salaries and fringes. There is some increase in repairs and maintenance of vehicles, conference and education, fuel. This is the fuel line. This is the only place the fuel line shows up in their entire budget is under the sheriff's, and that's maybe that's not quite fair to him, but that's where it's always been. So a little increase there as well. I mean, they have the most vehicles that use that, so I guess that's why it's under public safety.
He's still running short of staff over there, Don?
He's got 2 vacant positions right now, 1 dispatcher and 1 deputy.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
So the increase overall for law enforcement is $269,000. And again, he'll be here on the 30th. Another grant that I'm not 100% sure that we'll have. School resource officers, that's 2. Just salary increases and fringes. More grants. Volunteer fire departments. When Matt submitted his budget, he had talked to the 3 volunteer fire departments, and they requested a 5% increase over FY '23. So that's what you see reflected there, the 5% county contribution, 5% increase in the county contribution, equally divided between the 3 volunteer fire departments. This top number is the state money from the fire programs fund.
Ink it, sign it, and FedEx it over there. Worth every penny.
Yeah. They do a good job. They work well together. Volunteer rescue services, we pay a mileage reimbursement to the 2 volunteer rescue squads. You can see in FY '22, it actually amounted to more than 50,000. Matt thinks that, this is a good number. This is state money, 4 for Life grant that comes through. PIMS Council is a regional effort, that multiple counties contribute to that effort, and that's our share. This is the same contribution to MedFlight that we get every year. It's gone up in past years. I think it started at 200 and went to 500 and 700, and now it's up to 1,200. So in the past, you all have not funded this.
We haven't funded it at any level yet, have we?
No, you have not.
I'm
So-
still not in favor of funding it.
Well, I mean, you can save some time if there's no appetite for funding this, and, you don't have to, I'm not looking for a vote, but if there's a consensus of not, then I
I
can,
may consider if it gets up to like 10,000. I don't know, why, yeah, you're talking about just getting rid of it completely.
yeah, I mean, don't have to,
We've never funded it because,
yeah.
they charge $30,000 to your insurance company when you get on that thing, so it's fully funded
Yeah.
by the dollars that folks pay through their insurance.
Well,
or-
I'm okay with taking it out.
Me too.
I don't need to see it.
And as Jason said, you haven't funded it previously. Paid rescue services, I've highlighted the number here.
Because we know
Oh,
when we
Matt-
start funding it, we'll just grow exponentially.
Absolutely.
Matt just texted me, the med flight that's requested here, he says does not charge. So maybe I'll leave it in, and then when Matt comes in before you all, maybe he can help explain that. So at least we know one person's on. Is there anybody else listening?
So there's a second mid-flight?
There's other other helicopter ambulances, but I'm not, I'm not versed in this. Matt can explain that. Paid rescue services, I've got his salary line item highlighted here. This, he took that same pay scale that he created a few years ago, and he's massaged it some because, other counties, as I said, we're all drawing from the same pool of limited providers, and he wants to keep us at that level where we're not losing people. So he has gone in and adjusted the numbers on the starting area, starting hourly pay, plus increasing the loyalty part of it. So this is a little bit more than the 5% across the board, but it's an area where if we lose people, we're going to be hurting tremendously, because we have budgeted for 14 full-time positions, and we've only had 12 for years. And Matt's been able to make it work utilizing part-time and overtime, and that's why you see these overtime and part-time numbers up there. But
So would you say it's 6% or 7%?
I don't know the exact number on that, because
But we know it's higher than
it's
5.
higher than 5, but it's not based on a salary number. It's based on an hourly rate, because that's what they're paid by.
Right.
Plus his loyalty, his pay scale, and it's in the supporting
We wanna-
documentation.
Again, we just need to be consistent.
Yeah.
So his, in actual for 2022 was about 100,000 over on overtime and part-time. Does he think this will help fix that?
Yeah, well, we have to cover so many nights a week for the 2 volunteer rescue squads.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, they will let Matt know, a lot of times last minute, that the paid crew has to cover additionally, that they can't cover it. So a lot of that overtime and part-time is related to that. I think the increases that Matt has here, he feels that, will satisfy our current employees so that we can retain those good folks. Some more grants that I'm not sure that we're going to get. Public safety radio, pretty much in line with FY '23. Department of Forestry, this is, we have to pay 9 cents per acre of forest land in the county to the state to make sure that if we have a forest fire, they're going to send that bulldozer and plow to plow a line around it. And that's local emergency services. This is another Chief Smith line item, pretty close to FY '23 levels. What's this one? The jail, this is, again,
Back up. Talk to me about the public access LED, or AEDs, under Matt. This is a new one.
all right.
What page
He's
is it?
put, what we just finished looking.
Yeah, the public access AEDs, actually, Mr. Lee's been involved with Mr. Smith on this. Virginia Quality Life which you all may remember from helping the Y to get established many years ago, still has some funds left over. And they're going to use those funds over the next several years to maintain our existing AEDs and put some at other public access sites. So. Did that answer your question, Mr. Pale?
Yes.
All right.
Just to add to it, it was about $8,000 that was gifted to the county for AEDs. So, what I say gifted to the county was gifted to VQL. And we need to, go ahead and use those funds. So Matt and, VQL has worked out an arrangement where they're going, I think, allocate somewhere around $2,000 a year till the funds run out. So that's the way we're gonna work it.
Okay.
Under the sheriff, the jail, again, most of these increases here are salary and fringes, increase in repairs and maintenance. I don't know why, Jeff, we have county there, that really can come out, based on actuals. And, our population there is running way higher than it has in the past, so obviously your food is higher. Juvenile probation and detention. The Juvenile Detention Center, that's based on a 5-year running average of the services that the county uses, and so that's why this number changes over years, and our FY24 estimate is at 41,042. I did know, I had that acronym, but I can't remember right now. It's Office on Youth, and again, that's gone up a little bit as well. Contribution to the Court Service Unit, this is for the parole office and in Richmond County, and this is our share of that expense. Building inspection, again, the increases are salaries and fringes. I will tell you that in the supporting documentation, right after the building inspection budget request, there is a letter from our building official, the building inspector, our E&S officer, erosion and sediment control, our director of planning and land use, and our permits technician. And the reason I bring this up is because 3 of those 5 individuals have come to us in the past 2 years from working in other local governments. And they have seen the workload that we have here. And the basic gist of that letter is that we basically work our people more than other local governments do, and that we're having trouble, keeping up with the pace. And so I think it's interesting to read that letter and hear the perspective of folks who have worked in other local governments. And that letter goes on to state that they think we need an additional building inspector. They think we need an additional codes enforcement person. They think we need the recreation coordinator that is included in here. And they think that we need an additional maintenance person, which we haven't got to yet, but you'll see that coming up. So 2 of the 4 are already included in here, and you'll see that later on in this presentation, I'm basically taking the other 2 and trying to create a hybrid for that one person who would be able to help with building inspections and also code violations. So instead of a separate position for each, I think the first attempt at that should be a hybrid position and do 1 full-time instead of 2. But I think that letter is interesting to get the perspective of three folks who have recently come to us with many years' experience working at other local governments.
The other aspect of that too is that there's been a number of complaints over time, some valid, maybe some not so valid,
Yeah.
on delays and other things. And so we need to be cognizant too of not only what the pressure is internally from our staff, but externally as well from contractors and other people that are working with those services. Are they satisfied about the turnaround times and all of that?
Yeah.
And if they're not very satisfied, then that's another aspect we need to look at too, that they're actually serving the public as well as we can.
We just recently made a little fine tuning to that one, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. And you know, I haven't heard as many complaints in a while. And these, you know, all these folks do great jobs. They, you know, they're working very hard.
I understand what they said, because I used to go to conferences and things of that nature and strike up conversation with some of the other larger counties, the officials from that. And they were director of gifted and talented, or they were director of federal programs, or they were director of special ed, or they were director of whatever. I was director of all of them.
Yeah, that's, and that's the basic gist of that letter. I mean, that's right.
Don, I guess. 'cause
You might
I'm
want
new- I'm
Bill
sorry.
might not be able to hear you.
I'm sorry. I'm new to this. Is this workflow, because I know how many building inspectors we've had in the past. Has the workflow over the last couple of years or since COVID, has it dramatically gone up, or is it a steady increase? I'm trying to get a feel. I mean, I'm sure there's some guidelines that of a certain amount of calls they can take in a year and do those things that we ought to be looking at. I don't know that, so I'm just trying to get a feel of what we're dealing with. I know we got the issue with Whitestone that was an unusual thing that I would think it's gonna be short-term, but,
Yeah.
you know, what's that feel? I'm just trying to get a thought there.
There's been a tremendous increase in the number of permits per year, and in that letter, he breaks that down.
Okay.
The number of permits over the last 3 years, I believe, and how long, how many permits, how many inspections can be reasonably expected of an inspector per day. Brett Dawson, who does the majority of the inspections here, he gave Crystal his run sheet today, because what he does in the morning, he'll come in and he'll map out his route. You know, MapQuest has like a route optimization feature that, and he had on that one today, I don't have it in front of me, but it was almost 4 hours of drive time. So, you know, if you're working an 8-hour day and half of your time is drive time, that cuts into the number of inspections you can do. So basically, you know, they're saying, you know, 7 or 8 inspections is, you know, a reasonable amount per inspector per day. And we're averaging way more than that. We're averaging, you know, in the 20s.
So is there like inspectors spending, like probably going all over sides of the county too in that driving?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, if you have to go from Windmill Point to Tolles Point.
That's a long drive.
Yeah, so.
Takes up a lot of time. That would be the implements to having a split schedule where one
Yeah.
inspector would cover this side of the county and one inspector would go this way.
And that's what they've been trying to do. I mean, Jim tries to stay in the office as much as he can to review plans and sign off on plans and to handle walk-ins and to handle questions that, you know, come by email and phone. But what he'll do is, and there's certain inspections that he has to do because he's qualified to do those, and Brett hasn't attained those certifications as of yet. You know, finals and commercial and various things, rides, some things. But what you know, what Jim has done is that very thing. If Brett's at one end of the county, he'll go to the other end and pick up those so that, you know, he's not rushing from one end of the county to the other. So, I mean, they're doing everything they can to make it better.
So do they keep, I'm sure they keep data on how many inspections they're doing every day?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and a lot of that is in that letter.
Okay. 'Cause
So, yeah,
I'd like to kind of see that, so we can,
Yeah.
that's sort of, we can tell how much it's increased over
Yeah.
time. And
Yeah,
that one tells you how much building is going on and how much growth is occurring. And also it tells you that your staff is being overworked or
Yeah.
the public's not getting the service return they need because it's taking too long.
Yeah, well, it's, as I said, it's a very good letter, and and it has a lot of information in it.
It doesn't sound like to me then this is something that you could use part-time person for a while to catch up. It's more of just a continual growth that we need to address.
Well, number one, finding a part-time person who's qualified
Yeah.
is going to be difficult.
Yeah.
And, I don't know how long this building is going to stay at this level. And if it drops off some, that's part of my hesitation to creating two full-time positions, one as a building inspector and one as codes enforcement. Because, at some point in time, I see the building slacking off some. And rather than having that person, without a full day's work, or maybe even letting that person go, I think if my thought is create a hybrid position that could cross over between the building department and zoning and, contribute to both.
Yeah.
Because I definitely think we still need to beef up on enforcing our ordinances.
Yeah.
And need to have more of a discussion as a board about the steps in the process of that, because it seems to me that there's a gap between what we can do here and then having to go to the courts.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
such as like, can't we impose fees ourselves? Fines and fees without a court order? Like, can't there be, like, if you get a violation notice and you ignore it after a certain many days, we can start fining you?
Jim Cornwell is going to want a court order before we do that. The Wetlands Board can impose penalties without a court order, but we've never done it at this level without a court order. And, I mean, I think Jim Cornwell, is a whole lot more comfortable going to those lengths after we've got a conviction in court. So, I mean, our process is, if it's a valid violation, we send a certified letter and first-class letter notifying of the violation, given a certain amount of time to rectify it. If they blow us off, we give it to Jim. Jim writes another letter. If they blow him off, then he gets a court date.
Can
But
we insert a middle ground step in there somewhere to basically talk about these violations publicly every month in a presentation almost?
that's an
Because I'm
interesting
getting
idea.
tired of having to deal with some of these things, and they're dragging on too
That's-
long in the complaints, so I'm starting to say, like they did in TriStar, where they put your bounce checkup on behind the cash register, almost like that, so we'll have a
I think
presentation
that-
every month, we'll go down the list of them, we'll call them out.
The problem is the people that do it, I don't think they care about their name being on.
That's
They just care
an
about the
interesting concept. That's interesting.
Is there anything this board can do to make sure that our codes are clear and, especially with, I think that we're gonna see more, commercial building, I hope we do, in the future. And I was thinking particularly with the, Tides End project. I know we ran into a snag on what, defines having, a sprinkler system versus not having one.
Yeah, well, that's building code. You're always going to have that issue of interpretation. That's going to always be there. I mean, that's building code. That's state and federal code. I mean, we really don't have a whole lot of leeway locally in that.
But that's not always black and white. So
It's
I
not,
saw
no.
that firsthand.
Yeah,
So
that's right, yeah.
We started the meeting with one thing and we ended completely different.
Well, that was the
And
purpose
so-
of that meeting, to come to some kind of a compromise. And
So it will always be that way.
yeah, you're going to have that under the building code a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. As far as zoning code, now that's different. That's, that's more black and white, but it's a lot of gray area in the zoning code as well.
Right.
Because what's junk or litter in one person's eyes is not in another person's eyes. So,
I think that code's really somewhat defined in that, like, as far as like derelict vehicles and things like that are well defined in that code.
yeah. I got county employees texting me right and left.
They're all listening.
Yeah. So, you must have two on now, Glenn.
No, they may be on the live stream.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, maybe so. But as I was stating, you're going to see that position that I'm talking about, the hybrid position, under the planning and land use, because there was one Bill Farrell's old position that had not been filled yet, but, you know, I didn't refill it right away because I was thinking down the line that it probably needed to include a building inspection aspect to it. So that's my thought. It could easily go under building inspection, but because we had money already in the budget under the planning and land use, that's where you'll find it. Animal control, again, just most of the increase is salary and fringes. Medical examiner, we get charged $20 for every autopsy that is done by the state, and that's what that is. The line item here, unclaimed remains, sometimes there are unclaimed remains, and the court mandates that the sheriff handle that, and we had one recently where the county had to pay for the cremation of an unclaimed remain. So you'll see overall increase in public safety of $573,838. Public Works will go a whole lot quicker because it's only two departments here. This is refuse disposal. Donald basically used the same numbers from last year, although the actuals are a little more than that. So I might give that a little more thought.
This seems like one of those things that have just been increasing due to volume mainly.
It has been, and you know, during the COVID, we used some CARES funds to take care of the amounts that were above average for per month. I mean, our waste management bill average per month is probably close to about $55,000.
Has he started to give thought to what it's going to increase his staff in the new facility?
Yes.
Because I would imagine that's going to require more.
Yeah, we've talked about that, and right now there's only 2 full-time people in that department and 11 part-time, and we're probably going to have to increase some full-time positions once that center's expansion is going on.
So speaking of hourly employees, we talked about hourly pay for the schools. What is our lowest hourly pay at the county?
Brand new starting out is going to be minimum wage, whatever that is at the time. But each raise that is given, we also give that to the
So
part-time folks.
$7.25?
No. The minimum wage right now is I thought it was like $13 an hour.
At least, if not 15.
Yeah.
Is that what it is in Virginia now?
Yeah. So, but we've, like I said, they get the increases that full-time people get. They just don't have the benefits.
Yeah.
But we've got some. Sheila Akers passed away here last year, but she had been here for, I don't know, 30 years working, so, or more. So, general properties, the salary line item here is highlighted. This is one of the new positions, an additional maintenance person. I don't have quite the max on that position that I have on the previous 2 positions.
Have we thought about considering subcontracting some of this maintenance, such as like lawn care or maintenance out to contract service?
We could. I could get an estimate on that. I just think that given the amount of maintenance at this complex with the buildings, just for instance, our septic pump system has gone bad. Mm-hmm. And, our current maintenance guy has been here for so long, he's got all that knowledge that he has shared with Jim Canner, our building official, and Bill Farrell, and all of that knowledge needs to be transferred to newer people, so that when the older folks, retire, that goes on. But,
Yeah, I'm more thinking down the road as we look at expanding all these public access sites to have
Yeah.
our lawn guy running around and cutting.
yeah.
I think we need a maintenance person on site to do all that stuff. You're basically a
Yeah.
site engineer, basically, is what you'd call them. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that as we expand all these public access sites, we want our general maintenance guy basically being a lawn care service for all those facilities.
Well, I mean, that's, we can certainly look at that as far as contracting it out. I don't know right now what that fee would be, but regardless, I think a second maintenance position is justified just from the standpoint of the current maintenance man we have is probably nearing retirement in the next few years. And, that, needs, my goal has been to have two people to do every job. And, I've gotten a lot of departments covered, but, I haven't got IT covered yet. That's why you see a new IT person. You see a second person in maintenance. So, that's my goal, is to have at least two people who can cover each department. And so regardless of whether we contract services out, I think this second position is justified.
And I do, I agree with that too, because then we knock down on a lot of the requests we're getting in within house about certain things being done. And
Yeah.
social services is one of them, inside and outside.
Yeah. And see, in the past, our building official and building inspector have helped with these, and they still do. But that takes away from the time that they need to devote to building inspections. So total public works is increased about 100,000. Health and welfare, the annual fee that we pay to the health department is increasing. That's mandated by the state. Not a whole lot we can do there. The free health clinic is asking for an increase this year. They have a formula that they use to come up with this number, and that's in the supporting documentation.
Did we give them an increase last year?
You did. You went from $100,476 to $135,713, and they're asking for $15,454 more this year.
11% increase. That's a pretty good little bump.
I'll make sure that Jeannie Nelson comes. She's not on my list yet, but I'll make sure that she's here.
Mr. Palin said we got to put things on hold and stop all the spending. Didn't you just say that?
I sure did.
Community Services Board, this again is state mandated. It's an increase here. Community Services Board does a good job. They provide a lot of the services that, under the Children's Services Act, would have to be done by private day placement or residential placement of those children. And the CSB provides a lot of those services, and that's a modest increase, in my opinion, for the job that they do. But Linda Hodges will be here to address that. Bay Agent's also asking for a little bump this year. $475 in the Bay Aging and $1,910 in Bay Transit. Certainly inflation and fuel costs could be attributed to those.
Hey, Don,
Yes.
let me ask you a question, because this came up. My wife sits on that board, Bay Agent, and a question came up. She asked me, and I had never heard it before. If they want to add another transit vehicle, bus, they have to get, that request have to come from the county?
I don't know the answer to that, Bill. I can try to find
'Cause
out.
that's
I
what,
don't know.
that's what they was, she said, they said on the call, and I told her I wasn't aware of that. It may be true, but I don't understand,
I don't think they've ever made a request before.
maybe we just need to investigate and see what they're talking about.
Right. No, I don't know the answer to that, but I can try to find out. I just don't know. I've never heard of that. And
No, me either.
Yeah, I hadn't either. Look, I gotta switch Wi-Fi connection, so I'm gonna lose you, but I'll pop right back in.
okay.
All right.
The minimum wage is $12 an hour in Virginia.
12, yeah.
12.
Yeah. But we've got some, like you just said, we've got some convenience center site workers that are, $16, $17 an hour based on the number of years that they've worked here, so.
What do you think the federal minimum wage is? Just give me a guess.
$20.
$7.25.
Really?
You can cut the call.
725, they
Yeah.
haven't changed that in forever. That's why
Yeah.
They just don't change it.
I didn't know that
Wow.
our state had actually increased it.
Legal Aid Works, this is formerly Rappahannock Legal Services. This is another one that makes a request of you all each year. Now, several years ago, the county did fund it, but for the past several years, you have not funded this. It's the same request that they made the past several years, $5,600. They provide legal services for, folks in the county who don't have the means to hire their own attorneys. So, and they'll be here as well to address the board. The Haven for battered women crisis shelter is asking for a $400 increase. That's, I'm assuming, inflation-related. Comprehensive Services Act, this is what I was speaking to earlier, that, I've seen this number go all the way from like 400,000 to close to 1 million. It all just depends on the number of children that you have who require these services. And these are children that can't go to the regular public school for whatever reason, whether it's a medical reason or a court-mandated reason, and that number varies greatly, but this $800,000 figure seems to be good for now. Westmoreland County, had gone up to almost 2 million, I believe, a year or so ago. Social services, as I said earlier, the local request is 857,000. They've got an overall budget of 3.5 million, but the majority of their budget comes from state and federal money. Virginia Quality Life, years ago, the board contributed to that, but after the Y got established, this pretty much been non-existent. As you heard Mr. Lee state, they've got some leftover money, and they're working with Chief Smith to work on those AEDs over the years, moving forward. Boys and Girls Club is asking for a $10,000 increase this year from $35,000 to $45,000. Philip Mumford will be here the last week of this month. Healthy Harvest Food Bank is also asking for a $5,000 increase. County went from $1,000 to $5,000 last year, and they're asking for $10,000 this year.
It's easy to say no until you see them, until they're here, and you're looking at them.
That's why they all want to come.
Yes.
That's all contributed to the increase of food costs,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is going up 75% at least.
Level budget.
So you'll see total health and welfare increased 675,000 over FY23. Education, this is real quick. This is non-K-12 public education. This is community college. This is our share, very little increase there. Obviously well-deserved and well worth it, in my opinion. Recreation and culture, the Y is requesting level funding. Small increase in the museums, the Virginia Historical Society across the road, that's mainly from electrical services. We have to pay for the electrical services for the county buildings across the road, so. Community library is asking for a $20,000 increase over last year. You went from $112,995 in '22 to $122,995 in '23, and they're asking for $20,000 more in '24. And part of their justification is inflation, but they also have a new Storymobile unit that I'm sure they'll talk about when they're here at the end of the month. And the Youth Club of Lancaster County is asking for level funded at 15. You all bumped that 5,000 last year, and they're asking for level funding, and they'll be here the last of this month as well. So you'll see an increase of 20,000. Is that right, or did the formula? Yeah, that's right. Okay, 20,000 increase over FY23. Community development. Rappahannock River Basin Commission, Jason serves on that. I'm chairman too, I believe, aren't you? Yeah. That's our share, $1,000. That's a nominal amount of money for the work that they do. And that's been level funded forever at $1,000.
From the start.
From the start, yeah. Land use administration, this is where I talked about a hybrid.
It's the one program in government that has never grown in cost.
Rappahannock River Basin Commission, yeah. The Land Use Administration, this is where you will see the hybrid position I spoke of earlier that could help with picking up some building inspections and code enforcement. And this is the department where, when Bill Farrell assumed Brian's old position, we didn't fill Bill's old position right away because, as I said, I had an inkling that I might need to have that person, be able to cross over between zoning and building. So that there is, salary money there. I added the 5% for that position, and so that's funded there. Department of Housing, again, just basically
So, Don,
salary and fringes.
did I hear you right on the salaries under the land use? We budgeted, but we're not using that. Is that what you're saying?
No, you'll see the actual from FY '22 is only
Yeah.
187.
Yep.
Because one position was not funded, and one position, the environmental codes compliance officer, didn't come in till right at the end of FY '22.
Okay.
So that's why there's such a huge difference there.
And I haven't read the letter, but we need to pay really close attention to what they said, because a lot of what, I think why Brian left was the workload and the pressure that was on him.
I think so too, yeah,
Yeah, well,
yeah. That's what it sounded like when I talked to him.
no. If you all want to fund a position here and a position under the building inspection, we can do that. It just adds, some additional expense to the budget.
Well, I think you got a better feel
make
for
that
it than
call.
we do.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You know, that's just my thought.
Yeah, well, and that's why, I think maybe that hybrid position is the way to go at the beginning, and see how it works out. And if it turns out that our building permit inspection load continues at the rate it is now, maybe I'll come back next year and say, we've got to add that second position.
Is it, and I know there's some qualification things when we were talking, but the part-time person that is helping with the white stone issue, is that somebody that the building side could use if the growth continues there on a short-term basis?
He was a building inspector here at the county
Yeah.
previously.
Yeah.
And he left to go to Bay Aging, and he told me when he left that
We're public.
his new job was his calling.
Okay,
So I don't see him coming
coming
back.
back, okay.
He had tears in his eyes when he told me that. I mean,
Yeah.
he enjoyed working here, but he felt like he could help more people working for Bay Aging. And so that's why he left. And when he told me that was his calling,
Yep.
it's not a whole lot you can say at that point.
Yep,
But, the arrangement is that he works under our building officials' certifications to do the inspections in Whitestone, and it's just limited to that.
What you're thinking after that project is done, whether you.
I didn't know if he might be looking for
Yeah.
any part-time work where he could help, but,
I don't see that happening,
okay.
but, Department of Housing here, again, just increase in salaries. The part-time salary here was for Lewis Lee, and I know you all know that he passed away back on February 27th, and so I'm not sure if this part-time money will be utilized, but I want to leave it there just in case.
I just have to say, if there were more people like Lewis Lee in the world, it'd be a much better place. He was
Yes.
one of the nicest people I've ever met
Yep.
in my life.
The service last Saturday at the high school attested to that because it was packed. I couldn't agree with you more. Planning District Commission stays level funded. Broadband Authority, they've actually reduced their budget quite a bit because their role is shifting from trying to figure out how to get broadband to the county to now just basically overseeing that what we have in place actually gets completed. And, at some point in time down the road, the Broadband Authority maybe even could be dissolved, so.
Right now, they're on target to be done well before, they're even thinking before the end of the year, is what they're saying.
That's great. I'm gonna need to see it, though.
I agree, but that's what
This is
they're
all done in
saying.
November.
If they roll out as fast as Dominion did, then they should be good.
Yeah,
That happened almost overnight, it felt like.
yeah. Yeah, Dominion rolled in with at least
They
three,
were done in like 3 months.
yeah, with three, subcontracting crews, I think, so. Soil and Water Conservation District is asking for level funding at 15,000. Wetlands Board, asking for level funding. Board of Zoning Appeals, we budget for 4 of those meetings a year, level funded. Planning Commission, again, that's level funded. Extension Service has an increase, but that's due to the additional agent that was hired last year. You all know about that because Mrs. Brent came before you all and requested a supplemental appropriation of $11,000 to help fund that position mid-year last year. River Realm Branding, that's Susan Cockrell heads that up as 25,000 level funded. Bay Consortium Workforce Development Group, they made their initial request last year. They serve many counties. I don't know right offhand how many, but this is our share. It went up a little bit this year, $81 to $27.32. Total community development actually decreases, but that's because mainly of the Broadband Authority reducing their budget request.
Don, I know we had talked a little bit in the 2035 committee about the EDA and funding that more, potentially using poorhouse money. Where is that money currently reflected here in the?
That's not in the general fund, that's in a separate fund. That is, and it's,
Some of the general discussion with their Economic Development Authority, to brief you all a bit on it, is that they currently are basically don't have really much funding. They get all their funding off of bond proceeds.
Yeah.
So this year, their funding amounts to $29,000. So essentially, they're meeting 4 times a year to dole out less than $29,000 because
Yeah.
they're not going to spend all their money. So let's say they spend $20,000 of that.
yeah.
It's essentially almost a waste of time. You're not going to really get much. They got a good plan of what they're doing, but they don't really have the funds to lift economic development off the ground and what you really. So I think the discussions are around using some of that original poorhouse money to seed them more with a base of money and then have a yearly contribution, maybe somewhere around $100,000 that would be ongoing. So they'd have a amount of money, and then we could develop some real strategies around business attraction and using funds to attract businesses, as well as businesses, retaining businesses and expanding on local businesses that are already here, and laying out some more criteria there. And then they'll have a real mission and some real funds to actually carry out economic development, because currently, essentially, they're not, making it, they could give all that to one business and maybe they would make some progress, but doling it out the way they are is just kind of like me giving y'all a couple of bucks out of every meeting and saying, oh, go down and get yourself an ice cream cone.
Well, that's kind of disappointing to hear, though, because if the vision of this board is economic growth, that it should be much better news than what I just heard.
What type of, go ahead.
I mean, I don't know, this is part of the, I'm hoping with the new assistant county administrator coming in, that will look different in the future.
Yeah, I mean, that would be part of that person's responsibility to be the staff liaison to that group. Jason's correct in everything he said. The EDA can facilitate up to $10 million in bonds each calendar year, but the problem is their opportunities are just not there. You know, Dan Siegel with Sands Anderson is, you know, probably the most astute bond counsel that I know, and anytime that he has a possibility for our EDA to take, he'll let us know. But those opportunities just aren't there. I mean, if you look at large projects, they're usually way more than 10 million. And a lot of the smaller projects are just handled, you know, closer to the source. You know, we've made bond proceed loans to the Mariners Museum, Williamsburg Landing, housing complex. Every time the board gets a revenue anticipation note, that comes off of that $10 million that the EDA can facilitate. But the opportunities just aren't there. The EDA collects 1/8 of 1% of the bond amount as an administrative fee, and that's the $29,000 that Jason was speaking of, that they have annually to spend. The EDA has talked about, you know, asking for an annual contribution from the board. And Jason brought up the Poorhouse Tract Fund. That's a separate fund from this general fund. Okay. That's not part of this. You all could, you know, decide to dole out some of that to the EDA. I mean, you could do that at any meeting. It's currently, that Poorhouse Tract Fund is currently right around $330,000.
And that money was originally set aside
For economic development. It was back in the 90s when the Poorhouse Tract was sold to the Audubon Society.
I think we need to have and work with the EDA to sort of figure out exactly kind of the economic, maybe when the new economic person comes on board, and work with them to try to figure out some criteria and some grant things that we can do. And then once we figure all that out, we should take that $330,000 and put it into the EDA's funds for those purposes, because that's what it was supposed to be used for.
Yeah.
Economic development, that's our arm for economic development. So once we get that figured out, we should not let those funds sit in the bank where they've been for the last 25 years.
Yeah.
And we've, I think,
agree.
doled into it one time for,
We did for the grant application consultant for the
broadband.
For the broadband rural utility services USDA grant that we didn't get.
What type of businesses are they looking at or thinking about?
Well, I mean, I think that would be part of the discussions we should have with them. I mean, I think we're talking small businesses, bring your own job. We're not talking big
Yeah.
manufacturers or anything like that. We're talking
Right.
small financial jobs, tech jobs.
Yeah.
Things you can do from your home, like those types of jobs, where people used to be maybe in offices but don't need to be in offices anymore.
I haven't voiced this, but I'm gonna voice it. I've been interested for a number of years of having businesses to come in here. And I'm not thinking about growing the county in population size, or someone said to me doubling the population. I'm not interested in that. What I'm interested in, for the people that live here, have employment that will pay them a decent wage so they don't have to go out and have 2 or 3 jobs in order to make it. Or they leave the county to go to Richmond or Washington DC or somewhere else in order to make a decent living. Can I speak frankly?
You are the chairman.
And I'm gonna speak frankly. I was thinking, when we have the new, the committee that we have now that's been renamed 2035, that we were gonna take care of that. But I'm beginning to hear the jobs that are coming in will be the ones that work from home, or you have 10 people employed and that's about it. That, to me, that's not taking care of our needs for our citizens who are underemployed or underpaid for what they are doing around the area. I know we need service jobs, and a lot of them are small as far as pay is concerned, but I'm looking for, I've already said it. That's where I'm looking.
The challenge is that we're off of the main road, we're so rural, but that doesn't mean that it has to be that way.
Right.
And that's why I'm hoping that with the new person in place, we can be creative in how we attract corporations to come here.
But, right, I agree with that. And I'm speaking bold again, and I know this can be viewed months later, but I'm going to speak my mind. But for years, I have found that the mindset of leadership in this community, in this county, is to keep it small. I mean, when I say small, I'm not talking about population. I'm talking about job opportunities. And I don't think, I'm beginning to think, now maybe I'm wrong, but I'm beginning to think that much has changed. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think a lot is changing, and and the 2035 committee is working on this, but it's a multifaceted approach, because in order for that company to come to Lancaster, you got to have broadband available.
Right.
We're working on that. You've got to have.
Housing.
You got to have housing. We're working on that. You've got to have recreational opportunities for young families. We're working on that. You've got to have a dynamic school system. We're working on that. I mean, I think we're working on all these things that will entice, a company to want to move here. Of course, they're still going to have the obstacles like transportation, but so, this board is doing those things.
Right.
And I mean,
Yeah.
we're working towards those goals. It doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
But I mean, we're working towards that direction.
I'm not talking about this board, because we got a mindset on this board that we're ready to move in that
Yeah.
area. But I'm thinking about the community leaders that would accept that or put roadblocks out there.
And
I don't know, you've been at the meetings, I'm only hearing.
The 2035 committee has some very influential
Yes, sir.
community members on it. Bank CEOs,
Is their mindset there
developer.
to bring this in?
Yeah. I mean, would you agree, Jason, with
Yeah,
that?
no, I mean, I think the motion is there, but it is it's like a stool, I said, and all these things kind of have to work in synergy together to support the stool of which you can then build future economic development on. But if you don't have good quality schools, places for
I
people
agree
to
with all
live,
that.
and those type, and connection to the internet, which is basically a telephone of today,
Yeah.
Yeah.
then you're dead in the water.
Yeah.
I agree with all of that.
Yeah, and I mean, we're working on all those things. And the Lancaster 2035 committee has been in front of the board a couple of times previously, talking about what they're working on. And they've set a goal to come back to the board at its July meeting.
We have no history of data to know what's going on, but all of rural America is declining in population across the board. And if somebody doesn't find something to do about it, then in another 25 years, a lot of these localities aren't going to exist anymore.
Yeah.
They're not going to have the funds or the people to exist.
And just to give some kudos to the EDA, years ago, they only gave grants to nonprofits.
Right.
Over the past 3 or 4 years, they've kind of changed and started giving grants to for-profit businesses, a lot of startup businesses, but they just don't have the funds to really, make a dent in that.
And that's the thing. I think their mission is kind of going in the right direction now, but when you have a small business that comes in and they can only give them a couple $1,000s, that's great. That's nice, but it's not going to make the difference of whether that business survives or fails.
Yeah.
I just want to know if the commitment is there from the community. Not from us, but from the community. I know the commitment is here with us.
I'm not sure it's been anywhere near as strong in the past as it is now.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
I mean, I hear more people in the community right now talking about, well, hey, I like what you guys are doing, what you're trying to do. And I always give them the caveat, well, we're sort of doing you build it and they will come, and we hope that we're going to get those young people in, and that's why we're doing these things.
Yeah.
But for a long time, this is my opinion, but for a long time, I don't think the leadership that's been up here has pursued that as aggressively as we are right now. It's just my opinion, but.
I agree with that.
So
And I've heard a
I
lot.
hope that this works. I mean, I really do. I mean, because, it's obvious we need some young working people. We've drawn a lot of elderly retirees, which have been good, but that doesn't help our job market.
That's
So we
right.
don't get these businesses that want to come to the area. So it's a hard dynamic. I want to think we're moving in the right direction, but, nothing is guaranteed.
Yeah, I guess I'm going from off the past, because I've heard a lot of good talk, my hopes gotten up and then it's been crushed. So I'm wondering if that's happening now.
Well, I mean, I think we have a good example to lean on here because economic development doesn't happen overnight, but we put a tremendous amount of economic development into our marine businesses, and they're thriving, and they've all hired extra people on now than they did. So there's evidence right there that if you invest and you invest properly, that the growth will occur. That's what I call a great public-private partnership. And the fruits are in the marinas. You can go to them and see them out of boats.
And the good thing,
labor,
because
and
it
all those dollars
grows-
are flowing back into our county. And if you look at the data of how many boats have left Middlesex and are here now, we're the only county that's grown in boats. So that's a data point that shows that what we did was effective. And the expert told us that it would be effective, and it's bored out to be pretty much exactly what he said.
Northumberland and Middlesex ask me every year about this time, are we going to reinstitute the boat tax? And I say no.
Well, the nice thing about growing slow is that it gives us time to plan, and you don't want growth without planning, so they have to go hand in hand.
Agreed.
But the one thing I don't want to hear is I don't want to hear that we're not going to grow because we're rural, because I never use that as an excuse, because at one point, King George was as country as you could be, and Spotsylvania and Stafford, and so we don't want to use that.
Yeah, I
We're
mean,
going to grow because we have smart leadership, and we're going to do it the right way.
yeah, you want to grow and have leadership and direct that growth instead of just having what you call
Absolutely.
urban sprawl. And it was just like, oh, you want to build it, build it.
Right.
Well, from a budget standpoint, the EDA is not making an annual request in this budget, but you do have options to fund them during the year, not out of the general fund. You can fund them out of that poorhouse tract fund. They've also talked about requesting some ARPA money for grants. So you may see a request moving forward for a request for some ARPA money. So both of those, the poorhouse tract fund and the ARPA funds, would not affect this general
My
fund.
thought with them is, when the discussion the other day, is that we should work with them to create some criteria to create a $25,000 grant, a $50,000 grant, and a $100,000 grant to businesses. And there should be criteria that the businesses have to meet in order to qualify for those. And if they qualify for them and the EDA has the funding that we've given them, they should just check all the boxes and hand over the check. It shouldn't be, oh, we've only got $20,000, so I'm going to parse out, oh, let's give him 3 and give him 2 and him 1 and have that kind of discussion. That's not the way economic development should occur. And there needs to be criteria that you meet the criteria, here's the funds.
Like number of employees they're going to hire.
Exactly.
And the wages they're going to pay.
Yeah.
So even though they're not included in this budget, you all do have options to fund them, outside of the regular budget cycle. Let me see, I think I finished this one, didn't I? Yes.
I think we're on non-departmental.
All right, yeah, non-departmental. This is just the LARA, the Tri-County landfill here. You'll see that in '23, I had $20,410 budgeted there. That was to include our share for purchasing the land adjacent to the landfill. That closed, that property conveyance closed
Can we put
the end
solar on that
end of
site?
February. What's that?
Can we put solar on that site?
That's an
That
option.
was exactly what I was
That's-
thinking. I was wondering how many acres it was.
There is an option there, that is an option, and we can talk about that.
I was reading an article recently talking about, I think it was New Zealand, and they're limited on their farmland acres, which you all know how I feel about that. And they were talking about alternatives they use, and that was one of them, old landfills
Yeah.
and things like that. Perfect spot
Yep,
for
it
it.
is,
As long
yeah.
as it meets the setback.
Yeah.
I saw a Walmart parking lot with them.
Yeah.
You could drive up under them as parking, and the solar panels were on top.
On top of, yeah, it makes sense.
Well,
It's a little bit more costly to put in, that's the big thing.
yeah. The county owns the Tri-County landfill with Richmond and Northumberland County, so it would be a joint effort.
Yeah.
But I've actually had an inquiry, I don't know, a year or so ago from a solar company asking about that.
Is
Very-
it in the
very
county
simple.
separately, or is it in one county totally?
It's actually located in Northumberland County, but the 3 counties own it.
Own it, okay.
Yeah.
How many acres is it now?
What we just bought was 65, and I'm not sure how many acres the original landfill was. But,
Okay.
and that 65 acres was recently timbered. So, you know, it wouldn't take a whole lot to clear that and put panels there.
That would be good.
Enhanced emergency telephone system, this is level funded. If you've got any particular questions there, Glenn handles that one. And so the decrease there in the non-departmental is because I took back out our share of the purchase price of that buffer, that additional buffer. The schools, this is the expenditure side of the schools. Again, this is from their budget. This is their level funded version right here. The expenses, they got it broken down by category. However, the past several years, you all, when you appropriate money to the schools, you have done it by lump sum so they can move money around between these categories as they see fit. So their request, total request expenditure-wise this year is $18,102,929. Let me backtrack. That's what has been presented so far. The school board will actually they've actually held their public hearing on their school budget. They're set to adopt a school budget on Monday night, this coming Monday night. So, you know, theoretically, I could see them possibly adopting a version higher than this. I don't know, but it's possible. So if they do adopt a version higher than this, that would be the version that I would advertise for your public hearing on March 30th. Then you all would adopt the school budget on April 13th. You have to wait 7 days by code to do that. But, you know, when you adopted a version, if this is the number you wanted, then you could adopt this number as opposed to whatever number the school board approves, if that makes sense to you.
Hopefully we can avoid that.
Yeah.
Capital improvements, broken down into schools, you'll see here, as I said, the Planning Commission will hold their public hearing on this on Thursday night, and then it'll become part of the overall budget. But I put it in here so you can see the requests. Of course, they've got school security grant matching funds. That's a 25% match. You know, it's unknown whether they get that every year. They apply for it. Sometimes they get the full amount, sometimes they don't. 2 school buses this year. The price of school buses has gone up. That's reflected there. And of course, this was a 3-year total for the new middle school, high school, and year 2 is at $24 million. So that's the school requests.
So do we already have that entire bond proceedings in our bank account, correct?
Already sitting in the SNAP account, and I mean, we've already transferred a little bit because they've had some engineering studies done, engineering work done at the Hills
So we're
Court
making
site.
money on that 60 million.
Yep, yeah.
Probably pretty good money right now.
Yeah. County capital improvement items, you'll see here, $80,000 for an EMS quick response vehicle. Matt will talk about that. If not, when he's here at the end of the month on April 13th. Public access and use sites, this is non-school related items. This is the $5 million that you borrowed the lease revenue bond through Truist Bank last fall. You know, that's sitting in a bank, in our bank account, in one of the investment accounts that Bonnie has. This $1 million is an additional $1 million for the P25 emergency radio system upgrade. This is a federal mandate to go to a digital communication, emergency communication system. This is the regional system, the L3 Harris system. You'll remember from meetings that we've had here with Matt and some of the Sheriff's Department folks, you know, originally we had a ballpark estimate in there at 3.2 million, and things that Matt has learned over the last year, this price is going to go up. But there's also grants out there for this, and Matt's very good at securing grants, applying for grants, writing grants, and getting them. So, you know, if we can get some of that money covered with grant money, that would be great, and I'm sure we'll pursue that. The Bright System AS400 server replacement, Glenn can speak to this if needed. This is the server that runs all the computer systems in this building. Treasurer's office, Commissioner of Revenue, currently all the building permits, although we're almost to the point of switching over to the new building department software. The server is at its end of life, and so that's the estimate for that. And
You mentioned cybersecurity earlier. Where are we on analyzing our cybersecurity and making sure that we're protected from hacking and infiltration?
Yeah.
It changes constantly, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
But we're covered, we have like, we've done an assessment of our systems to make sure that got the right protections in place.
We have scanned, what they call cyber hygiene scans are done pretty much on a weekly basis by another entity that, and we've already taken those steps and we,
Do the county employees have a VPN that they log into?
some do
Some
that,
do.
that when they do need, when they have, need to, to access the Bright system,
Okay.
they do have,
The
they do have
so that's
VPN
for,
access. It's very limited,
information
though.
that is crucial to not get out there. Okay.
Because we don't, I mean, it could be catastrophic if you get your system essentially hacked and locked.
Yeah.
And you get,
Well, I mean, we cover, I mean, we carry cyber security risk insurance as well. The Rackspace email server had an issue, a month or so ago, but that got resolved.
Well, there were only 4 county email accounts that were even, that were even,
compromised.
Yeah.
well, they weren't compromised, but they were on the same server that was.
Yeah.
But we've already made arrangements to move them, to migrate them to a different server. Same company, just a different email system.
For my work, I have a VPN for I can't get on my computer without being protected. And that covers emails and everything.
It's a big deal nowadays. Moving forward on the capital improvement item from the county side, the sheriff's office has requested tasers. This is, I believe, like 10 multi-shot tasers. There was a question at the planning commission level about if, things like this should be on the capital improvement item or in the general operating budget. And, past history, what we've done, because the question was, one of those would be less than our threshold of $10,000 to go on the capital improvement budget. But when you group multiple ones together, you go over that 10,000 threshold, and these do have a life expectancy of more than 5 years. And that's the criteria for our capital improvement budget. It has to have a life expectancy of at least 5 years and exceed 10,000 in cost. I mean, that's been our criteria for years.
I don't know if that should be a capital improvement item or not either. That would be like saying that the sheriff's deputies' pistols should be a capital improvement item if we replace those. I almost see that capital improvements have a title of some kind to it, or some kind of something like that. Seems to me that this is more of an it's nuanced, but it seems to me it's more of an operating expense than it is a capital expense.
It's definitely an operating expense. I don't know if it's an annual operating expense, which this annual budget covers. And I think, that maybe was the thought process years ago, predating me, that threshold, that $10,000 threshold and that 5-year life expectancy was, come up with.
It's going to be paid one way or another, but it just,
Yeah.
to me, it doesn't seem like
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, Don, ever since this came up in that planning commission, I've been thinking about it more and more, and I'm in agreement that this probably shouldn't have been, in there. It should have been in the annual operating budget, even though it's a one-time thing. It probably should have been over there, but I believe, if I remember correctly, we said that, after this year, we would make this recommendation going forward. I think that's what we said, but I'm in more inclined to say that things like this shouldn't be under the capital improvement. It should be in their operating budget. So, but I believe, you correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we said at that meeting also that we would address this going forward.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we thought due to the timing of that comment, you know, the budget deadlines had passed for submission, and that we thought we'd proceed this year under the current format with it being in the capital improvement budget. But if the board thought that those types of things, multiples of the same thing should be in the general operating budget, then we can make that change moving forward.
Basically, that's sort of like equipment, in my opinion, like, so, I mean, is he gonna, like, if he buys other equipment for his deputies or something, are we gonna go forward, have that as capital improvement?
Well, if you
To
look.
me, like, a capital improvement, again, is like, either has a title or it's something that depreciates in value over time that you have a replacement schedule for.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look down here to this 43,510, Sheriff's Office Patrol Vehicles, laptops, they want to get new laptops for multiple vehicles.
See, technology, I could see
yeah.
that being a big technology purchase, I can see that being a capital improvement.
Well,
But
Well, I certainly agree that I think the tasers and those things are probably more of the operating, but I also feel that probably the laptop would be at that point, because most laptops, I would think, unless it's high-end, are $1,000 or less. You know, the IRS rules are now, used to be, it was a small threshold, and anything above you had to capitalize. Well, a few years ago, they changed that threshold to $2,500. So anything $2,500 or less, you can classify, one item bought for $2,500 or less just runs through a small tools expense account. So that's what we use. Now, I'm not saying, but that's just a guideline of what IRS put out there, and that's what we use.
does he have an equipment line in his budget?
he does, yeah.
I mean, that's where I think it really should ultimately
Take
reside.
advantage of depreciation.
It can, I've let it roll in here, and I think once we get it through approval, it should just be
No,
moved
'cause
up.
if you
That
put
money
it
should
in
be
the
taken
small
out of the,
tools, it's
the
just
line should be
written
taken out of
off
capital
in
and just put that
1
money
year
in his
as an
equipment budget.
expense.
Well, we can do that, I mean, but like I said, all the deadlines had passed
Because that's the thing.
for the budget submission, so that, what Mr. Lee was saying was right, that we thought we'd proceed as is for this year, and maybe, you know, change the parameters for next year.
Just a one-time.
Yeah.
So, going back to, where were we at? Sheriff's Office Patrol Vehicle, they put one in here each year. EMS ambulance to serve Upper Lancaster Rescue Squad, that was approved last year. That's been ordered. The delivery date, I think, is next spring, or maybe late this fall. Matt can verify that. What this additional $60,000 is for a stretcher system for that ambulance. They thought they were going to be able to use the one that they had off of the old ambulance, but it's not going to work. So this is an additional $60,000 in addition to that $310,000. But again, this is an item that Matt was able to get a grant for the last time we did this a few years ago, and it was about, the grant covered about 50% of the purchase. Sheriff's Office HVAC replacement, that's just a multi-year schedulized replacement of HVAC. Refuse truck replacement, that current truck has close to 700,000 miles on it. It's an '03, and
It's been well taken care of. And
it doesn't owe us anything, so.
is that a diesel truck?
That was a diesel truck, but,
Just broke in.
yeah, yeah, it's, well, I'll tell you this, it had 685,000 miles on it when the odometer broke. So,
I guess we should get another one just like it.
so anyway, it's 6.4 million in capital improvement items from the county standpoint. Again, if you look at the total, it's 30.7 million for FY '24, but under here, you'll see 29 million of that, the financing has been secured. And I went in and put into the FY '23 column, out of that 13 million, which included 8 million for the new school, that financing is secured as well. So even though you see these big numbers here, the majority of that has already been financed. And the other big ticket item, this radio upgrade, I'm not sure exactly when that will happen. It may not happen in FY '24, it may be FY '25. It's federally mandated to be done by FY '25, or at least by the end of FY '25. So
Until they get there and no one's made enough progress, so they extend it to 2026.
that's a very distinct
And then in
possibility.
2026, they extended to 2027, and
That's a very,
someday, eventually, you get it before there's a P30 technology to start the whole process over again.
that could happen. So, debt service, we'll spend a little bit of time here. Short-term debt service, this is the revenue anticipation notes that in the past, we have gotten for cash flow purposes, if our fund balance was low enough and the treasurer felt like we needed some cash flow in September and October before tax collections started coming in November. She's told me in the past that as long as their fund reserve balance stays around $6 million, we don't need a revenue anticipation note. So I haven't budgeted anything there for FY '24 in that regard. The school energy performance, you'll see that's $210,000 for FY '24. I'm going to show you a debt service schedule here in a minute. That's going to go away here at the end of FY '26, I believe.
I don't think that ever panned out in value.
I would not disagree. This is the Truist Bank loan that I spoke of earlier, the $5 million for non-school related capital improvement items. This is the debt service for FY '24. You'll see a principal reduction, interest reduction, and because we went through our EDA for this, we'll pay that administrative fee to our EDA, and then our EDA can use that money for grants to local businesses. So it's a kind of a win-win there, kind of a small win-win as Jason has alluded to, but nevertheless. Greentown Gaskins, that's a 38-year USDA note for the Greentown Gaskins sewage treatment system. I think it's 1.38% interest. The same net amount, I just went in and corrected the amount of principal and interest that's actually reflected on the debt service schedule. The VPSA 2022 school bond, this is a $60 million bond. You don't see anything in FY '24 because we don't have a payment in FY '24. FY '24 interest is going to be paid through capitalized interest, and if you remember back when Davenport and Company was here, they had like 5 different scenarios. We picked scenario 3. The first year is capitalized interest. Basically, the loan is paying for the interest. Then we have the first 2 years we pay our interest only before principal reduction starts, and you'll see that more when I get to the debt service schedule. The VRA 2020C bond, that is the bond that we did back in 2020 to refund the 2014 Bank of Lancaster and Chesapeake Bank bonds. We got better interest rates, so that's why it was refunded or refinanced, and also included the Zion's Bank note that you all borrowed back in 2019, I believe, to fund a school study. That was about $2 million. So part of this goes away after FY '26, which helps in our staggered debt service schedule, as you'll see in a minute. This last one, the VPSA 2020 school bond, that's for the renovation of the middle school, and this is the debt service on that note. So total debt service for FY '23 is going to increase about $379,000 over FY '23. Most of that is due to the fact that the $5 million note has a payment due in FY '24. So as we move over to the debt service schedule, this is where you can see the total payments that will be coming out moving forward. If I draw your attention to, let's take the let's go all the way to the right and work back. The 2010C bond, that was a school energy performance. At the end of 2026, that goes away. So that $200,000 that we're currently paying in debt service can move toward, another debt piece that we have. If you look in the middle of the page at the top, the VRA 2020C bond that refunded the 2014 bonds in the Zions Bank, you'll see that after FY '25, about 800,000 of that debt service will move from that over to a school note. So that transitions nicely to when our payments start on the big note. And at the end of FY '29, we'll pick up another 200,000 there. So at the end of FY '29, unless you all borrow more money, we'll be looking at these three long notes here. This is the debt service schedule in the middle at the bottom for the renovation of the middle school, and you can see the debt service, total debt service, that's principal and interest, out to 2051. Left-hand side of the page at the top, you'll see the Truist Bank. This is a 20-year note, $5 million, and you can see the debt service there spread out over those 20 years. Then the big one is the $60 million new school note. You'll see, as I said, no payment due in FY '24 because capitalized interest is taking care of that. In FY '25 and FY '26, they're interest-only payments. And then FY '27 will pick up with principal and interest, and that carries through to 2053. Now, as Jason mentioned, we're earning interest on these unspent funds. So, that money will help, curtail maybe the need to address increase in tax rates moving forward. I don't see any, unless you all want to do something different. This budget is built on existing tax rates for FY '24.
What's their tax rate on those bonds that were, what was their rate of interest? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was
Right around 3%.
it was like 3.7 fixed on the Truist Bank note.
Okay.
And the two bonds, the one from 2020 was, I believe, right around 3%, and the 2022 one was just under 4, I believe.
Just under 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you need direction from the board on what to do with that money? Is that what you're asking?
No, this is just, I'm just letting you know that our debt service for FY '24 is going to increase based on the fact that we have a new payment from the Truist Bank, and then these debt service schedules here are just here for FYI.
Okay.
So, and that's it. The summary page is basically another way to look at the synopsis page, but it's skewed because it includes the capital improvement items. So to me, the summary page is not as good of a overall look at the budget as the synopsis page is. The synopsis page is, in my opinion, a much easier to understand look at the entire budget. So that's the budget presentation for tonight. As I said, 1 penny on the tax rate is $268,778. This budget is built on existing tax rates, 63-cent real estate tax, $2.04 personal property tax, 5% raise across the board for employees. It's 4 new positions, 1 revamped hybrid position, so kind of not really 5 new positions, but 5 different positions. So that's where we're at. Your next meeting is March 28th, Tuesday, March 28th at 5 p.m. You'll have probably 12 to 15 department heads and NGO representatives here making requests. And you'll also do that again at 5 o'clock on Thursday the 30th, which is your regular meeting night. You'll have probably 9 or 10 folks at the 5 o'clock session, and then at 7 o'clock, you'll have your regular meeting.
You're going to give them
And-
3 minutes, Mr. Palin? You're going to give them 3 minutes?
And at your
think
March
we get one
30th
little
regular
longer.
meeting, at your March 30th regular meeting, you will conduct the school budget public hearing.
Board, how do you feel about us bringing in a grant writer for the county? And I thought quite a bit about it. Matt Smith has shown us that that we have grant money out there and that we can be awarded this grant money. And I was thinking quite a bit about us hiring either contracting with a company that provides a service or bringing someone on board. And it would be a merit-based salary job. If it's a $60,000 position, if you can't bring in $60,000, then you don't have a job here. But I know that it will certainly reap benefits with all the different things that we're doing, and we're doing a lot of different things.
We're doing a lot of different things, and Matt's very good at grants. My environmental codes officer, Olivia Hall, has some grant writing experience from her prior job at Henrico. She actually crafted the FEMA brick grant for the Windmill Point project, did an excellent job on that. That grant application has made it through the state level and is now at the FEMA level.
See, that's just someone that's doing it part-time or on
Yeah.
the side.
Yeah.
If we actually had someone that sought the grants,
Yeah.
applied for the grants, I think it would reap benefits.
That, you can certainly consider that. The Public Access Committee has, contracted with a private consultant to do 2 grants. So I say they've contracted, the county's contracted based on their recommendation.
What area are you thinking
That's,
about?
that's the person I was thinking of when, Bill brought that up, that we had, contracted her services and, for something like that. So under those terms he's talking about, I don't know whether that would be favorable or not, but it is something that we can explore.
Well, it's also something to the new assistant, if he's has some avenues, he doesn't necessarily do it, but then if he can say, well, here's some avenues that we can go and get a
Yeah.
consultant to then write for those particular grants.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay, anything, oh, sorry. Anything else? All right.
Well, I do have one thing I want to bring up, and this is not related to the budget directly, but you all previously scheduled this meeting, so it's okay to talk about it. And I forgot to do it at the February meeting, so that's why I'm going to bring it up now. The Broadband Authority has been working on how to handle the transition of the equipment that the county bought with CARES money and put on the cell tower back here that has been utilized by Broadband Telecom Services to provide the wireless internet service that they've been able to provide. And, that original CARES Act application said that we would provide that coverage for up to 300 folks. And he's up there now at like 280, so he's almost at the 300 level. But for him to be viable after the fiber gets in place, he's going to need to continue using the equipment that is on that tower. The county purchased that with CARES money. We're currently paying $1,761 a year, monthly, to rent the space on that tower. Prior to us entering into that agreement, we were receiving money from SBA of around $1,400 a month because we own the land that that tower sits on. Now, what I'm getting at is the Broadband Authority has recommended that the county would assign the contract with the tower owner over to BTS. They pick up the $1,700 a month payment, and that escalates 4% each year. So we would no longer be paying $1,760. We would go back to collecting $1,400 a month from SBA because we own the land that the tower sits on. So that contract with, that agreement with SBA would move from the county to BTS. But the issue is what to do with the equipment that's up there and the value of the equipment. And it's of the Broadband Authority's opinion, and I agree, that that equipment is already 3 years old. And in a technology world, you know, it's probably going to need to be replaced here pretty soon, in the next couple of years or so, upgraded at least. So the thought is to basically, you know, that equipment would go to BTS with the transition of the SBA agreement. And, you know, that allows him to continue to provide this wireless alternative and to provide, you know, that alternative once the fiber broadband is here. It's more economical. It's been very reliable, the service that he's provided. The reason I'm bringing this up is the Broadband Authority is going to have to facilitate the agreements that will, you know,
Seems like a no-brainer. We
transfer.
go from spending money to making money,
Yeah,
so,
so-
I mean,
But as far as equipment, you're saying it's not worth us selling it to
I don't think it has
the value?
a lot of value.
Okay.
and we used
uh,
ARPA money for that, correct?
We used CARES money.
CARES
for that,
money,
yeah.
so.
Yeah, and it was $300,000
Yeah,
total.
It seems like 300 was
Yeah.
the number.
Yeah, and Craig has gone to several more Broadband Authority meetings over the past year than I have, and is there anything you can add to that, Craig, or is that?
No, I mean, you know, and I truly believe that the equipment that's up there, you know, looking at it from our point of view, is it anything you, by the time you went and took it down and all that, you'd spend more probably than it's worth. I think us encouraging him to still provide that service to almost 300 people is probably the best benefit for the county. That's my thought on it after
I would
listening
agree.
to it all.
You want to vote on that?
You need a vote because it's property?
A vote wouldn't hurt. Go ahead, yeah. I mean, that would be
All
good.
right, okay.
Just, I mean, the
You want
vote.
me to do
yeah,
it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I move that we turn over the equipment that was purchased by the county and is used by BTS, correct me if I get the name wrong, that be turned over to BTS and the appropriate documents put in place to facilitate that by the Broadband Committee.
As well as the contract, or we don't have to vote on that?
No, there's no contract right now. The Broadband Authority is going to handle all of the documentation that needs to be done. They just need to know that the Board of Supervisors is on board with their recommendation. And so, yeah, so, I mean, Craig's motion basically laid it out that you all are on board with their recommendation to do everything that he just said.
All right, y'all have heard the motion. Bill, you got any questions? Lee?
No, I agree. I agree with it, and I vote aye.
Okay. Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All right, that's a unanimous vote.
All right, I appreciate that.
Okay. All right, if there's nothing else, then I'll adjourn this meeting to March the 28th
At 5 o'clock.
at 5 o'clock. All right.